In June, Manitoba Opera announced the longtime CEO Larry Desrochers will be stepping down at the end of the 2025-26 season. Over his remarkable tenure, Desrochers produced 50 productions and cast nearly 400 artists, many of them Canadian, with a Manitoba First policy that helped launch the careers of numerous local performers. On the financial front, he led the company out of debt and delivered 12 consecutive balanced budgets. With his upcoming departure, Manitoba Opera is taking the opportunity to reshape its leadership model. Instead of a single CEO, the company will now divide the role into two positions, an executive director and artistic director. On July 9th, the company revealed their new executive director will be someone who knows the organization inside and out. Director of Operations Michael Blais, a member of the administrative team since 2010, Blais brings more than 25 years of experience in the arts sector and a deep passion for Manitoba's cultural community. It's a natural and exciting choice for the next chapter of Manitoba Opera. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about his new role at Manitoba Opera, I am joined by Michael Blais. Hi, Michael. Great to have you here.
Hi, Chris. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So the obvious first question is, how does it feel to be the new ED at Manitoba Opera? And what was your initial reaction when you found out that you'd got the job?
Yeah, well, I was just totally thrilled to find out the news. When we had started this whole process, when Larry had informed the board that he wasn't going to be renewing his contract, we struck a working group to start looking at the leadership model and start looking at, what were the next steps in that, and starting to think about the skills and attributes of the new leaders. And, I had thought about putting my name forward at that time, but a process had kind of already started. And so at the same time, I wanted to make sure that the organization was going to go through that process and make the best decision for the organization.
Right.
And so I decided to not put my name forward at that time. And so I just held back, and I thought, well, if the board comes to me, that's another thing, and that'll be my sign that it was meant to be. And in January of last year, that's just what happened, and so that's where we find ourselves. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You've been in the arts for a long time. Can you talk about your background before you started working at the opera? You have a background in dance, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I started as a dancer. I graduated from the School of Contemporary Dancers. And then I danced professionally for two companies. One was Le Groupe Dance Lab out in Ottawa. And when I returned back to Winnipeg, I danced with Ruth Cansfield Dance Company. And so Ruth her choreography had always really appealed to me. And so that was always what I had my eye on when I was graduating, but it didn't line up quite a bit. So I went out east first and danced out there for a period of time. And then when I returned, I got my chance to work with Ruth.
Mm-hmm. And you started working at Manitoba Opera in 2010. What role were you originally hired for? And can you talk about how you climbed the ladder and some of the roles that you took on as you progressed through the organization?
Sure, yeah. So when I first joined the company, the organization had just brought their ticketing services in-house. So prior to that time period, the organization had used Ticketmaster or other third-party box office providers. And so, that was a strategic decision at that point in time for the organization to bring that in-house so that we could enhance some of the relationships that we had with our patron base. And so I started as the box office coordinator at that time. And, when I had retired from dancing, I had always had my eye on arts administration of some kind. I didn't know what that was going to be at that point, but, and yet at the same time, when in my early years of dancing, the way that arts organizations run and function was totally opaque and cloudy to me. I didn't really fully have a grasp of that. And so when that opportunity came up, I knew that it was a good opportunity to work for an established organization and that I was going to get some good experience for the a full scope of the organization.
So you started off in the box office, but then where did you go from there?
Yeah, well, it's been kind of a natural progression of my role over the years. So, I still do some of those same things that I did back in 2010, to be honest. The organization has always we've always reevaluated the staff complement for the organization. Things are very fluid in arts organizations, as you know, and so you're always having to reevaluate and say, is this the right complement of staff to support the priorities that the organization has to achieve? And so, over the years, it's just been an addition to my roster of duties, and that came with various title changes over the years. So about 2014 or 2015, I was promoted to Director of Administration, and so I took on at that time, when I started, we had a company manager in place in the organization. And when she departed, that position went unfilled. And so some of those duties kind of fell down to me. And so then it's just been this kind of natural evolution in some ways. It's funny, I made a joke the other day that to someone in the office that, I just ended up as executive director because I just was here long enough, it just happens.
Would you say, with your background now at Manitoba Opera, would you say that the organization has changed at all? And if so, how has it since you were first hired?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in some ways it's changed, in some ways it hasn't. When I think of the ways that it's changed over the years, I certainly think the way that we've developed the community engagement side of the organization and our education programs, that's really shifted. That was kind of a bit of a nice add-on in the earlier years at my time with the company, and now it's kind of a main pillar of the organization's programming. So, community engagement is our opportunity to kind of extract some of the themes from the operas that we're presenting and, have different discussions about them. So whether that's, delving into the music or the life of the composer, or maybe it's a topic, a discussion topic for a panel discussion about some sensitive material in the opera, or, things like that. So those can be really broad scope events that we do around the operas, but that's become a really kind of key way that we can expand the opera beyond the stage
and keep things relevant with a wider audience, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we definitely it reaches a totally new audience, and so we're always looking at how we expand our reach and our service. Yeah.
Now that you do have the benefit of experience of opera and dance, how do the two compare? Were there elements from your dance background that helped when you started at the opera in 2010?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when you're studying as a dancer and training, it just requires so much discipline and dedication, and so from a very young age you develop this kind of insane work ethic, and so that has, served me both personally and professionally, to be honest, and so I that's the first thing that comes to mind for sure. But I also think, as a dancer, you have this kind of you've got you're taught to have a reverence for tradition and for history.
Yep.
And so, working in a similar field that has, these inherited works that are 100 or 150 years old or older, that served me well in this role as well.
The public sees the sets, the lighting, the singers, the orchestra, etc. But behind the scenes, there's a myriad of things that need to happen for the show to actually make it to the stage. In your role of Director of Operations, can you talk about some of the things that you need to take care of in order to make sure that the opera does successfully make it to the stage?
Sure. Yeah. So in my current role, I was really focused on box office management. That was a big part of it, and working with the marketing team. we're such a small group of people. There's only 10 of us on staff. And so we're all very much involved in each other's roles. But that curtain's going to go up, November 22nd at 7:30 regardless. And, there's a lot of pieces that have to come together, right? As an opera company, you've got so many different stakeholder groups, right? You've got the ticket buyer, and you've got your donors and your sponsors and your funders, and they all need to be serviced in their own way and honored for their contribution to the art form.
With the new ED position, what tasks does that add to your plate?
Yeah, so a lot. Yeah, in some ways though, it still feels like a really natural progression of my role over the time period. And Larry's been such a great mentor to me over my time at the opera. But ultimately, I'll oversee all the departments and work with all of our director level manager positions. And at the end of the day, it's me and the new artistic director that we'll be bringing in over the next year, and the board of trustees that are responsible for that long focus direction of the company, and then I've got to come up with the business plan to achieve that.
You've mentioned it, Larry Desrochers, he's a big mentor to you. His last day is in the spring of 2026, and your first day as executive director is August 1. Does it help that there's this layover from the transition from your position now, and now that Larry's going to be here a few more months?
Yeah, it's, I'm really glad that that's how things are playing out with this transition. It's a big shift for not just me in taking on this new role, but it's a shift for the whole organization, right? And so all of the staffing complement kind of shifts a little bit, and the board's got to get used to a new leadership model, and the patrons will have to get acquainted with that new model as well. So there's a lot of changing elements there, and it'll be just totally invaluable to have his vast experience, as a resource for us.
You know how the machine works. Now that you've got this new role, do you have any goals, coming up through it? Was there anything you were oh, I wish we could do this, may have this happen, or do you have any goals like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, coming out of the pandemic, we're still in a recovery period for that. So audience rebuilding is still a major focus for the organization for the next few years. And that's always going to be part of the reality of working for an arts organization. Yep. And, but I think, it's also just, it's the opportunities that we have to explore new ways of connecting with our patron base and serving the community and bringing opera experiences to Winnipeg and Manitoba. And, I think on a personal level, I just have a goal to stay as open and flexible and curious about what that future could be,
One of the other things that we're dealing with in this world is artificial intelligence, social media. How important is technology for you to sort of help things progress? And can it change some ideas for marketing? Have you thought about that at all? Or
yeah, I think it's hugely important, to be honest. I think technology has always been important to arts organizations. We maybe haven't thought about it in that way, but I think that's true. When we think of we don't forget that, projected translations were a technological advancement at some point in time, right? The early 70s, I guess. And, that was a really creative way of using not even new technology at that time, but existing technology in a different way that totally broke down one of the barriers to experiencing and understanding and appreciating opera. And so I think that there's so much potential in the area of technology for organizations. We're actually in the middle right now of I'm calling it a digital transformation project for the organization, and it's funded through Prairie's Economic Development Canada, and they're funding it a 3-year project to create innovation and new strategies and new technology deployment in organizations. And so we're taking that opportunity to really become much more data focused in our decision making process, really leveraging technology to connect with people and make sure that we're achieving our goals through a data informed lens.
It's been so great to see you again. I'm going to wrap up the conversation by asking what you're most excited about in this new role.
I think that the change in leadership model is the most exciting thing for the organization, right? As I said earlier, this is just kind of a natural evolution of my role with the company, but I think what's so exciting is that, for the first time, and, Larry's done a wonderful job of stewarding the organization, and he's had huge artistic achievements during that time. But it would be great to see an organization that has someone dedicated full time to the artistic life of the organization, and we haven't been that privileged yet, And so I think that that's going to be a really exciting thing, because it's just going to bring new opportunities for the organization.
Absolutely. Michael, this has been wonderful to have you here. You and I have been friends for many years. I was so happy to hear about your promotion. They could not have picked a better person. I wish you nothing but the best in your new role as Executive Director for Manitoba Opera. And thanks so much for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure.